What's up, guys? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Joannis or Joe Hatagwa. I'm a Sierra Leonean American living here in Accra, Ghana. And if you want to know about what it's like to buy and or rent real estate here in Ghana, then this is the video for you. All right. We are live. We're live on Instagram, we're live on YouTube, and we're live on Facebook. I'm going to give it a second for people to join. There's always a few stragglers getting on. Before we get started, let me know if you guys can hear me. I just want to get a thumbs up from you all on Instagram or on YouTube, and let me know if you guys can hear me. If you're on Instagram and you want to follow along and see who we have as our special guest, I am pinning the link for the YouTube video in the comments there on Instagram. All right. So let's just give it another couple of minutes before people join. Until we get a large enough group, let me start by just doing some quick housekeeping. But before I do, actually, now that I see a couple more people joining, can you guys give me a thumbs up to let me know that you can hear me? What's up? David McCrae is there. Can you hear me? Let me know that you can hear me. Can I get a thumbs up from you, David? And it looks like my connection's a little bit weak. My signal's weak. So can you guys hear me? Can you see me? Let me know. Give me a thumbs up to let me know that you guys can hear me and you can see me. Both on Instagram and on YouTube, let me know. And just as a reminder, okay, so Balliot83 says yes, sure. So I guess that means you can hear me. The link to the YouTube video is pinned, by the way. So if you want to, okay, good. What is it? Ram Sparkle Success. Okay, so you can hear me. Cool. David said you can hear me. Makia said you can hear me. Great. All right, so those of you who are on Instagram Live, the link is pinned so you can join the YouTube Live. So we got a special guest today. I'll introduce her in a second. But before we do, just want to do a little bit of housekeeping and keep you guys up to speed as to what is to come. So, and for those of you who are new, I want to give you guys a little bit of background on who I am. I see a bunch of new people on Instagram Live, so I can give you a little bit of who I am and what this is about. And then we'll get into today's content. So, first things first, as I mentioned at the start, my name is Joannis or Joe Hatagwa. I'm a Sierra Leonean American. I do live in Ghana. I've been here since December 2020. I started my YouTube channel based on my move to Ghana and what it's been like, and also building a house in Sierra Leone. So everything from moving into the apartment that I live in here in Ghana, my job that I had for about a year here, what dating is like as a single man. And then I interview folks who have made the decision to move from the diaspora back to the continent of Africa. So all of that and anything that has to pertain to moving and living on the continent, specifically Sierra Leone and Ghana, which is where I spend most of my time. My Instagram page has been around for a little bit longer. It's a little bit older of a page. It's been around since 2019. And so that page has really been more about everything happening in the diaspora and on the continent of Africa. And then every once in a while, I throw in some content that you'll see on YouTube as well. So with that, I think what we can do is we can start getting into today's content. So today we're going to talk about real estate as a whole in Ghana. We do have a special guest today, Maya King, who CEO of Magnate Realty, and she's going to, she'll do her intro in a second. And we'll, I'll bring her on in a second here to talk a little bit about herself, and then we'll go through some questions for her. I do see that there are some questions already in the live, so we'll make sure to get to those questions too. Miss P says hello. What's up, Miss P? All right, cool. So I think what we're gonna do is just get started. Those of you who joined on Saturday, you got a chance to hear us talk a little bit about what's happening in Sierra Leone. And thanks to all of you who joined and had we had a really productive conversation. Unfortunately, I couldn't get to all the comments There were a ton of comments we couldn't get to, so apologies for that. But feel free to go back and comment on the replay of the video. More than happy to do a second video where we follow up on everything that happened in Sierra Leone with the protest and the subsequent violence that followed. There's plenty to keep you guys updated on, and we'll make sure to keep you guys going. All right, cool. So we have Red Gold Green says, hello from Wisconsin Avenue, Washington, D.C. Shout out to D.C. All right, cool. All right, and you guys are okay. A bunch of people are joining on Instagram Live too. So again, for those of you who are watching on Instagram Live, there is a link to the YouTube video if you want to see our guests, because you'll only be able to hear or see me on Instagram. You won't be able to see our guests. Now, with that, I will bring our guest on. So, okay, so I'm gonna bring her on. So. Introduce you guys to Maya King. Hey, Maya.
Hi, good evening. How is everybody?
Thanks for doing this. And Maya, you can hear me right, loud and clear. You guys can hear Maya too, right? I can hear her, so I'm sure you guys can hear her.
I can hear you.
Cool. So, Maya. Yeah. So if anybody's watched any of my content the last 3 weeks, I showed you guys. Maya walked us through 3 different apartments and/or one house, and that is the start of much more to come. I have an interview that I did with Maya a long time ago, which I'm going to be putting out this week or next week, and then we have more content that we shot together. We actually went to go look at apartments last weekend, and likely we'll be seeing some more apartments soon. So you guys can expect to see more from her on that. Okay, and so on that, I thought what I could do is maybe start with a quick intro. So Maya, do you want to do a little bit of an intro of who you are and what is it that you do here in Ghana?
Sure. So, hi everybody. My name is Maya. I am a real estate professional. I have worked in real estate in larger metropolitan areas like Miami, Florida, and New York City for, about 15 years before I took the plunge and, moved to Ghana. I moved also in 2020, once the country reopened during the pandemic. Wasn't sure that I would end up in real estate when I moved here, to be honest, but there's just so many opportunities here. And then, within networking and, just trying to see how do I fit in, I got into real estate and I'm building something great now. So it's exciting. Not only am I in the real estate space, I hope that I can be helpful to the diaspora that's looking to relocate to Ghana for however long of a term. So, I can give feedback from my experiences or experiences of other expats that I know, and help, because it is a process. It's a transition for sure.
Absolutely. I can tell you, I didn't have a resource like Maya when I was moving, and luckily I ended up having a friend who lived in an apartment next door. Otherwise, it would have been a struggle. I was in Airbnbs for 4 months, trying to figure out where I was going to live, and I ended up spending a lot of money in Airbnbs before I figured out where I wanted to stay more long term. And we'll talk about Airbnbs today. We'll talk about renting. We'll talk about buying. I'm going to try to keep this moving along. But if you guys have questions, feel free to put the questions in. I know iTuber always is big with the questions. So we got some questions from him in a second. We'll get to those in a moment. But before we do, I do want to just get into Maya's background a little bit and talk a little bit about her company that she's building, so that you guys get a little bit of her background and you understand, a little bit about who she is and what she's doing here. So, we talked about this, but I think it might be interesting to let the group know. The name, the Magnate Group, where did that name come from, and how did you come up with that name?
So going through the business registration process, I thought about what represents me and what represents the legacy that I hope to build here, and also to kind of be in reverence of who I come from. And so my last name is King, you know, which is why sometimes I act like a princess. And Magnate really means a royal, right? A royal designate. So that's where that came. And I felt like it was big, you know, powerful energy, and it's just stuck. It worked.
Nice. Love it. And then who are the type of clients that you service with the Magnate Group?
Quite a varied group. Some are from states, some are from UK, some are from Canada, some are from Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, Rwanda, South Africa, Nigeria. It really just depends on, I guess, how I got connected to the person in the first place. Right. So I also represent homeowners that have properties here, but they live in states. So I manage a lot of those properties for them. And of course, I have plenty of Ghanaian clientele as well.
Nice. And around how many properties are you currently representing today?
Oh, wow. So in my direct portfolio, I have upwards of like the 30s or 40s, and more coming on. I actually have to sit still and do a really good count, because even this week I have a bunch of clients that I'm onboarding. So there's that. And then there's also like, real estate is a relationships business. So here in Accra, I have other agents that I've learned to work alongside of. So sometimes I'll get a request for a property that I don't have. Well, I'll share it with my colleague, and they'll tell me, okay, this is what I have access to. So I have some of my own portfolio exclusivity, but then I have access to greater network because of networking with other real estate agents here in Accra.
Got it. All right, cool. All right, so I did want to get a little bit about you and your business, and just so people understand who we're talking to, so they know why you know what you know, and why they should listen to what you have to say. So I do want to get into buying, then we'll get into renting, and then we'll talk about Airbnb. So there were a bunch of questions that people had asked me throughout the last year and a half, a little over a year and a half since I moved here. So some of those questions are the questions I have for you. And then I also saw a question here, and I wanted to know your thoughts on this from iTuber. He always has really good questions. But before I get into that, I just want to give a shout out to Red Gold Green. Said, I watched this lady interview at Jerk Soul Restaurant. She's such a smart lady. I don't know, you must know what he's talking about. Some Jerk Soul restaurant. I don't know. Was there an interview of you at a Jerk Soul restaurant?
No.
Where did Ivy interview you somewhere? Ivy Prosper?
Yes, in one of my properties in Cantonments.
Oh, okay, that was.
And then there's another interview in my own house that maybe gave away those vibes.
Okay. Well, in any case, somebody says they recognize you. Okay, cool. So there was a couple of questions about buying, and so because it came in even before the live started, 7:54. iTuber, I love that you're always on early and asking questions long before the live started. So one of his questions, so let me just put it up on the screen and before we get into some of the other questions. So because I think this is really relevant. So my biggest question with real estate in Ghana has to do with freehold versus lease. Since it's Ghana, it is likely 50-year lease for foreigners. So what happens afterwards? What's the exact process? So I think maybe take a step back, because the word freehold, I was not familiar with it until within this last year and a half. So do you want to maybe just give a little bit of background on what that means, freehold versus lease land or owning the land, and what that means here in Ghana?
Sure. So, and again, I would say that this is something you want to talk to a lawyer about, these type of questions, someone who's in real estate law in Accra, because they'll understand all of the loopholes. and also having a lawyer part of any land transaction you're doing, you can avoid so many headaches. But a freehold means that it's your land outright after purchasing it, and a lease means you own it for a specific amount of years, and at the end of that lease you'll be asked to renew. So there'll be a commensurate with the market at that time. There'll be a fee that the leaseholder will ask of you, the purchaser. And yes, if you're a non-citizen in Ghana, it's typically a 50-year leasehold that you'd receive or be eligible to have. A foreigner can't own 99 years or more than 50 years. So to answer that question, now the exact process of renewing at the end of the leasehold, similar to buying, you meet with the owner of the property and you go through a negotiation process where you come to, a middle ground of what that amount will be that you pay to renew. And then you just execute a contract as well, just to show that it's been done, have some tracking. And then you'd register with the Lands Commission office and pay whatever taxes, which is typically 5% of whatever the transaction was. As an overview.
Got it. Okay. And so on that note, right? So because that was one of the things that came up. So in Sierra Leone, we have freehold, right? So when you buy the land, you own the land outright. In Ghana, they do not have that, right? So as you mentioned, you want to talk to a lawyer, but what it means is that you're basically leasing the land for a period of time, whether you're a Ghanaian resident or citizen, or you're a non-citizen, right? And so at the end of that time, you have to renew that lease with the government, right? Because they're the ones who actually own the land, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right?
Sometimes it's a government, okay. Sometimes it's a chief, sometimes it's a family.
Okay, got it. Okay, cool. And then just further on that, most freehold, don't worry, you could just renew, but what is the specific law on this? So again, I think you mentioned speaking to a lawyer, thrown off their property if renewal is refused. But that last question, do you know the answer to that by chance?
From what I even know about the regular eviction laws, no one can just throw you off of property. There's a process that has to take place because you need the police to enforce something like this. I know with evictions, like you need to be at least 30 days late. There's a 30 days notice. You might have to appear in court, but the judge will say, okay, well, this is how much time you have to find another place. But I think that the renewal process, from what I understand, it's really like families that are meeting together. So you just keep negotiating until you get to a middle ground and, look to move forward. I don't know of any cases where it's been largely litigious or where someone has had to be kicked off of their property. But again, this is an excellent question for a real estate lawyer. And I can certainly recommend a few firms if people reach out.
Okay, yeah. So and Maya's information is going to be it's already in the description. So when you watch this as a replay, Maya's information, her email and her phone number is there. So if you want to reach out to her, it'll be right there in the description. As with all the videos that her and I have done together, her information is right there in the description. There are a couple more questions about this whole leasing process. I think so. James Bond, who I think, if I'm not mistaken, is Ghanaian, mentioned when you lease is yours, you only renew at the end, and the renewal is not big money. Yeah, the way I understand it, well, the way I've heard it from someone who owns property here, he had mentioned to me that, and I think this, like Maya said, you want to check with a real estate lawyer, but the way I understood it is the price that you buy it, you lease it at, I guess, is when you renew it, it's at that same price, whatever time in the future it is. That's the way I understood it to be. Now, that was his explanation, but he is also a Ghanaian citizen. And, I think his lease on his land is like 100 years or something crazy like that, because he bought land like 30 years ago, 20 years ago, whatever it was. And so I don't know if those laws apply now. That's the way he understands it to be based on his purchase. But yeah, so I think reach out to Maya. She'll be able to put you in touch with a real estate lawyer to help you answer the specifics. Any specific questions about that you want to talk to a lawyer, she'll do that. Legendary King says it's adjusted for inflation at the time of the renewal. Okay.
True.
Okay, so you know that to be true, Maya. That's the case. Okay.
True. I mean, again, probably around market industry standards.
Got it.
Of the market
okay.
at that
time. Okay, cool. And then there was one more question for I2, but these are very specific questions. So let's see if, and I don't know the answer to these, so maybe you might. So let's say I buy a property in one of those estates, meaning there are many estates around Accra, so there are many estates here. What would the legal status be as a foreigner? Would I have to leave and come back every 90 days, or does buying property get me permanent residency fast? Okay, so this is two questions. There's a question about residency, and there's a question about real estate. I don't know which one you want to take first, or if they coincide with each other. Do they coincide? Do you know?
Well, I would say that I don't think the land purchasing process has anything to do with citizenship or residency status. Like, as far as will buying land get you residency or citizenship, to the best of my knowledge, the answer is no. And again, it depends on who you're buying from and what kind of property you're purchasing. How it would affect any of your status. But a foreigner can own land in Ghana, I think up to 50 years leasehold. So it can be done, right? But I don't think that it translates to any level of assistance with the immigration process. Would you have to leave and come back every 90 days? I mean, even if you have a basic tourist visa, you know, the amount of time that you can be in Accra from any entry date is really decided at the airport. If you want to ever extend that, you can go to immigration offices or even the airport and pay to renew those dates, like extend your time. So you don't have to go in and out every 90 days. But maybe, I'm not sure what visa status you're under. So again, that might be a question for another person. But to the best of my knowledge, I don't think that purchasing land translates to any assistance with immigration.
Yeah, that's what I understand too. Yeah, and I think so I would say handle that separately, right? So I would, if you want to become a resident, I would say definitely handle that separately. I've done the residency process, but I've done it through a job. So yeah,
and
just
you
want
can
to
even
make sure that I
do it on your own. Yeah.
Yeah, you can. But you don't even have to, right? I mean, there are some people, right, who just kind of renew their visa, right? They just continue to renew their visa, and you can do that in perpetuity, right? You don't have to leave and come back, right? As far as I understand, as long as you go to immigration, you can continue to extend or renew, right?
To the best of my knowledge, yes.
Right, of course. We are not immigration attorneys or professionals, but from what I've seen and what I've heard, that's what I understand. Okay, back to real estate specific questions. All right, so so just sorry, it's really slow. Just Wilfred said Ghana should change the amount of time people can lease land. It should be for 10 years only. 50 is too much, but it's better than 99 years. I guess it depends on from what perspective you're looking at it from, right? And in my opinion, I actually kind of like the fact that they did that, because that just meant that the original people, whoever that might be, own the land. So I always kind of like that idea, because I've seen too many places, other places, where more people who aren't from that country own the land than the people who are from that country, and the country doesn't own its land anymore. So when I first heard this, it was a little confusing and shocking to me at first, but based on my experience in other countries, specifically in Sierra Leone, I've seen it where there's land ownership by others and not by Sierra Leoneans, and it's becoming more and more prevalent. So at least that's my opinion. Those views are my views and my views alone, but that's how I've always seen it. I don't know if you have thoughts on the land lease versus freehold, Maya, before we move on to any other questions.
I mean, with regards to the actual comment that Ghana should change the time the length of time for a land lease from 50 years to 10. I mean, some plots of land in Accra are selling for $500,000 or more. And if you had to renew that every 10 years, that wouldn't be a very good investment, would it? And that would mean that like the infrastructure that supports land registration and the renewal process would have to be so tight, because imagine how frequent traffic you'd have throughout the door. I don't know. I don't know if you want to say to renew it in such short intervals of time, but I guess you kind of have to look at the bird's eye view of things. If you change that, how will that attract development and opportunities for everyone? You know, would that be counterproductive to development, or would it facilitate development? I think that's the position you have to have.
Good point. All right, cool. So, so those are the questions for now. I have a couple more myself, just in the process of buying it. As if you guys have any questions about buying, feel free to add them to the comments here so that we can ask Maya directly. But my other question for you was, we kind of answered the process of buying land, right? Like, is there anything you want to add in terms of what the overall process looks like the steps you need to go through to buy land, or do we cover that in some of the other questions?
Well, I mean, once you are, like the first thing is to, engage with the real estate agent, or whoever is referring you to the property should be someone that you trust and, has a true traceable connection to the ownership of the property. You want to know who the owner is as soon as you get involved, like once you're ready to pitch an offer, kind of thing. Once an offer is submitted to an owner and approved, a sales contract can be drafted, a deposit can be put in escrow, and then the buyer can start the due diligence process. So the owner can share their documents, or you can just go and do a search at the Lands Commission offices to just verify that who you're buying it from is actually the owner, and you won't have any issues moving forward. There's attorneys that you can hire for this process. There are firms that you can hire for this process. And then once you have all your ducks in a row with your documentation, you would move forward with completing the transaction. Sometimes here in Ghana, people are open to payment plans. It's kind of like an open market, for lack of a better term. There's different ways to go about it. And I would say that from what I've heard, once you purchase land, you want to start building a wall on it, putting a structure, finding someone to occupy the land as soon as possible, so you don't end up with a squatter situation.
And I would say almost everybody in West Africa does that exact process. Even I did that on my property in Sierra Leone. Wall first. We call it pambodi, but it's like a pan house, like a shanty house. And I have a caretaker on my property who's been there now almost 2 years, to ensure that I don't get squatters, right? So and I know people in Nigeria do the same, and I've talked to people in Senegal, it's the same there too. So I think we're all under that same process. So I guess it's no different here in Ghana. On that, I do want to ask you about some of the ranges of prices for houses here in Ghana. So if you have any thoughts on prices for pre-built houses in estates and or land purchases, what kind of money should people be expecting to pay? Like, is it, I've seen some people talk about, what are these things called? Container houses that are like 15,000 or 20,000. But then I've heard people say that they paid upwards of 400,000 for property. So do you have thoughts on like what people can expect to pay for certain size houses, or whether it's an estate or a standalone house? Thoughts on house pricing, I guess, is the question.
So, house pricing, the whole process, land purchasing and then developing, furnishing it, securing it, it's commensurate a lot of times, like the closer you are to Accra, in center of Accra. It's commensurate with prices in states in major cities. It depends on what you want, and where the property is. Is it, borehole ready? Is there electricity run, fiber run, etc.? Is it in a developed area, or are you going to get something that's out where, the development and street names is still pending? You can get land for as little as like $2,000, $1,000 per plot, up to $500,000 or more. It really just depends on the location. And then the same thing goes with the cost of housing. You kind of have to have what you want, your budget in mind very solidly, and then you can see what's available under those options. You can build a home using locally sourced materials like a raffia home, and you can spend, less than $40,000 on that. You can, look at a container home, which is also affordable. There's other prefab homes options. You can purchase a property off plan and, take advantage of a payment plan over 2 to 4 years. But anything built to a Western standard is going to match Western prices.
Fair. Okay.
Because everything
a couple questions from the Sorry. That was the last thing. I didn't catch the last thing you just said. Sorry.
I said because most construction materials are imported.
There you go. Back to the conversation of importation. We had the same discussion on my live on Saturday. Everything's imported. So, well, not everything, but a lot of things are imported. And when they're imported, you're going to pay the same prices you are going to pay elsewhere. What you make up for in labor costs here, you pay in import for the importing of the materials a lot of times. All right. So while a Ghanaian living in the diaspora, if I'm not mistaken, if I remember correctly, says the pricing in Accra honestly makes no sense. Cities with more robust infrastructure have more competitively priced properties. Example, Nairobi, Joburg, and Cape Town. Yeah, I mean, the prices can be a bit aggressive here. Like I said, I have a friend who she bought a plot of land, I think for she had I think it's 4 plots of land, but it's in Accra, and it was something like $250,000 for just the land, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot, but the resale value is expected to be pretty substantial, right? Further down the line, and then your rent, right? I mean, so I don't know if it makes up for it in an immediate term, but it seems as though the rental prices are kind of commensurate with the cost. I don't know what your thoughts are. I mean, based on as you're talking to people who you mentioned are from all different parts of the world who are moving here, how have they been talking about the prices? Have people been shocked at how expensive land buying or home buying is in Ghana, maybe comparatively speaking to other parts of the continent?
I mean, the first thing you have to realize is, first of all, just because it's Africa doesn't mean that things or values are low or things are cheap. I think that's the first thing that has to be removed from your mind, because you don't go to Miami and expect to buy a house for $20,000 and get much, or New York or Chicago. So you can't come here with that mindset either. The other thing, like I said, is every single thing is imported. Even oversight, it's expat oversight, expat pricing, commensurate to what you would make in States or in UK. The labors, the materials are all imported. I said that labor, you get what you pay for, kind of thing. If you want a house that looks like you live in Texas, it's going to cost you what it costs to live in Texas to live here. And supply versus demand, there's not much available plots right now in cantonments or Laboni, where they've been experiencing a boom for the last few years. So the price tags on land values there are just astronomical. They really are. But, you pay to play. If you want to be in those areas, that's a cost. Housing is not, the pricing of housing is not based off of infrastructure. It's based off of, the cost of materials, the cost of the labor, and the demand. And I think that answers why things are priced the way that they are here. Now, some people make the mistake of pricing things in US dollars when they didn't, use, it doesn't match the value of what they're looking for. But then as a buyer, as the one with the money, you use your discernment and you decide, okay, this matches the value of the US dollar or this does not.
Yeah. And I mean, and these people are saying versus other places in Africa, and the three other places they mentioned haven't seen the level of influx of diasporans and people moving to those cities the way Accra has, right? So I think, as you mentioned, supply and demand, right? There's only so much space here, and there's much more demand, so that drives up the prices, right? So although Nairobi, Joburg, and Cape Town are definitely areas that have better infrastructure, more well known for those elements and business capitals, they haven't had the same kind of influx of repatriates or diasporans moving there. I think you guys might have seen that Forbes article that came out earlier this year that said that Accra is the what was it, the best place to vacation on the continent of Africa, where obviously that would have been Nairobi previously. Some people would have said maybe even Cairo, and Accra has taken that for the reasons that we all know, turn and beyond, right? So with that, a lot of people are moving here, hence all the YouTube channels about people who are living in Ghana and talking about their move to Ghana. So I think that has a lot to do with the supply and demand, as Maya just mentioned. And so that might answer the question. Now, while A says you disagree that there is a big movement of diaspora to Joburg, there is. I don't know if it's at the same rate though, right? I mean, if I remember correctly, from the year of return, Ghana made $3 billion in the first 6 months after the year of return. So it's a huge influx of cash, and a bunch of people just never went back. So I know that Joburg is getting it. I know that even Nairobi is getting people moving back, because I've talked to people who are moving to those places. I just don't know if it's at the same rate as it is in Accra. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, Nairobi might be bigger. I don't know if Joburg is, but Nairobi's bigger. So there's probably more. If there's more places to build and buy and less demand, then prices probably won't be as expensive. Spirit Warrior did ask a question on the topic of what are you paying the guy that's living on your property in Salone. So Spirit Warrior, he got a Sierra Leonean citizenship earlier this year. So I met him in Sierra Leone, as a matter of fact. So the guy who lives on my property actually pays, well, he's supposed to pay rent. Ideally, they pay rent to you, so you have in Sierra Leone in particular, so that you have a paper trail. But he and I have a different. That's the arrangement there. Is he's actually like a tenant on the property, right? So, but it's different because of the relationship we have. So he's also my driver. He's also a mechanic. He's like I call him like a slash. He does everything locally for me there. But yeah, I mean, ideally in Sierra Leone, what you want to do is you want to have someone who's actually living on your property that's paying you rent, actually, so that you have a paper trail of them paying you rent, and you have it on paper. You have a contract they signed, and then you're getting rent every month. And that, what I've been told, and you want to speak to a lawyer about it, but what I've been told, that really helps you deal with potential future problems, because they've been on your land, let's say 10, 15 years, you never build, and they say they've been living there, this is my property, and you're not there to go to court. You have the documentation to show that they've been renting from you, right? So, because that is a thing that happens pretty frequently in Sierra Leone, where people who have been staying on your property will now try to take it from you. I don't know if it works in the exact same ways here in Ghana, but specifically to Sierra Leone, that is the recommendation I make for you, is you have a rental agreement and you have them paying you rent. James Bond is mentioning that he sent you an email. So I guess after you're done here, you have at least one email in your inbox from this call. Okay, cool. Tim Black has some thoughts on the houses in Accra, Ghana. He said, "I hate the houses in Accra. Have no green spaces and are too close together." I mean, I guess as a general statement, maybe, but I've seen many houses, especially in the housing developments, like the estates that have plenty of green space. And I've seen standalone houses that have plenty of green space too. But I've also seen some without it. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that specific comment, Maya, before we move on to the next question.
I think
No
the
green
plot
space.
sizes are so small, but Ghanaians generally like bigger houses, houses to, homes to house a big family. So I think that that's kind of like more important. And then also like just from a standpoint of practicality, if you have landscaping, you have to have someone who's going to take care of it. And so many of these properties are built, but the owner does not live around. So they don't have something where they have to come back to deforestation every time they come back into town. But I'm with you. When you go into Eastern region, it's just so refreshing and so much green foliage everywhere. And I wish that we could see more of that here in Accra. Hopefully, developers will become responsible and start including plenty green landscape in their developments.
Oh, there you go. And then the last question on buying mortgages. In the US, we're so used to the idea of a mortgage, right? You go to a bank, they look at your financial profile, they determine how much you can afford, and they give you a loan. What have you seen, if at all, is available here in Ghana in terms of mortgages or getting a loan from a bank to be able to purchase a house?
There's quite a few banks who offer mortgaging right now. The thing is, the rates are high. They're between 12 and 20%. So it's kind of like really counterproductive to have a loan. That said, there are ways of obtaining financing in the United States and using that to purchase housing here. You should speak with a financial advisor in States, though, to figure out that process. But I do know people who are looking at properties here in Ghana, and they're coming with a mortgage in States to be able to buy. So they must have collateral there. But yeah, most people don't do mortgaging. I think that you can, a lot of owners, like if you're buying from an individual owner, they may be open to rent like a payment plan where over 2 years you make enough payments to pay it off, and they rent. It's like you're renting the property from them for 2 years. So you can either live in it or they can rent it out to someone else. There's so many other ways of getting around an actual mortgage here, but still completing the transaction.
Nice. Or you could just pay cash, which is what I'm doing in Sierra Leone.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, cool. So that's on the home buying process. Anything about buying that I missed or that you want to mention before we move on to rentals and renting?
No, I think that you touched on it, very well. I think the trick of buying in Accra, if you're not from Accra or in Accra, is having a great agent that you can really trust. And obviously, if you purchase from a developer, the odds of having land litigation, issues down the road is very slim to none. And then also, if you're going to purchase from a developer, make sure it's a developer who has a reputation for good work and turning over projects in time.
Nice. Okay, cool. So let's move on to renting. And then the last topic will be Airbnbs afterwards, because we want to talk to you about your Airbnb business and what you're doing there. Okay, cool. So I I remember my first couple of conversations with local agents, and one of the things that was surprising to me was the fees that they charge just to take you to look at properties. Okay, so I think we lost Maya, so I'll speak to this until she comes back. So they'll charge you a fee just to take you around to look at properties. And so this happened to me, and I was not aware of it. So, I met my first agent, and he was, at the end of taking me around, he specifically asked for his fee for that day. And it was the first time I had ever done that. Like I've been, you know, in States and other places where I'd gone around with agents before and I wasn't used to that. So that was a surprise to me. I think we got Maya back. So let me bring Maya back on. Maya, can you hear me? Are you okay? Yes.
Yes, I can. Sorry, I'm not sure what I touched.
No worries, no worries. No, so one of the things I wanted to mention was the fees, right? So like it's customary, right, here in Ghana for a local agent, from what I understand, to charge you a fee to take you around to look at different properties. I mean, I guess that's not really a question, but on that topic, right? I mean, is that what you understand to be the case from your experience talking to people here? And do you know what that tends to be? I mean, I've been through it in my own personal experience last year when I was looking for a place. And it was different. People had different prices. Some people said 50 CDs. Some people said 100 CDs. Some people said, I just want lunch. But I had gone through that previously. And so I wanted to mention it here because it's different from in the States from what we're used to. And so I wanted to get your thoughts if that's what you've heard from your perspective, and what you do differently than what you might see in terms of that in particular.
Sure. So I have heard that there are other agents who do charge like a viewing fee. On the agent's perspective, this helps to narrow down people who are just doing a research project and like kind of wasting your time. So someone is going to pay a fee to come and see a property. They're probably very serious about, you know, obtaining some property, whether with you or someone else. So, you know, it's a way to eliminate time wasting. I think the commission I charge reimburses my cost of transportation sometimes. But I will say that it is common practice here because I have like gone out to meet with property owners to come and view properties to bring into my portfolio. And when I was leaving, they gave me something for transportation. And I didn't ask for it, but I was definitely happy to cover my transportation costs. So I think it's cultural, like it's something that's just done here. You know, you don't put someone, you know, out of their way to service you to some extent. And then I would say it depends on the agent and the agent's level of experience if you would get charged for a viewing fee. Like I said, from our perspective, we would charge a viewing fee to prevent time wasting. But if you are set up in such a way as an agent that you have, you know, your transportation or you have an alternate to stand in for you for a viewing, you don't actually have to bear a cost for viewings. So it depends on the kind of agent that you end up with, to be honest with you. Industry standard for commission is like if you rent a place for a year, you know, the agent would receive 1 month's rent. If it's short term, it's usually 10 or 15% of the rent that they receive. Most agents should collect their commission from the owner that they represent, but sometimes an agent is bringing the buyer or lessor to an agent who represents the owner. So each person has to get their commission from the entity they represent. So that's just a conversation that you should have with your agent before you go and see any properties. You should know who they are, what they, you know, make sure that they represent your lifestyle, so you don't have to over-explain your expectations or get frustrated when there's a disconnect. And then thirdly, you should know their fees before you go and see any properties.
All good points. A lot of interesting stuff there. I didn't even know about the where you should get the commission from. That's an interesting one. Okay, so on that, sorry, you were gonna say something else?
No.
No? Okay. On that, what are the standard lease terms for rent here, and how often are you expected to pay rent?
Well, the law says that a landlord cannot enforce that a tenant prepay more than 6 months advance rent. So most people pay 6 months at a time if they have like a year's lease or more, because everyone's aware. But then sometimes you'll want a deal. Maybe you'll get a property that needs a bit of investment. And so you'll tell the owner, all right, I'm going to give you this much, but I'm going to rent this from 5 years and I kind of want to have complete control. And you can do those. Everything is negotiable here. This is a society of negotiation and haggling. So there's no standard lease. It's really case by case or property specific. And it really depends on what transaction needs to take place. But it's not foreign to what you're
I think
used
that
to.
the most important. Sorry, no, go ahead.
Sorry.
There's a delay. Finish what you were saying, and then I'll say what I was going to say. No, go ahead.
No, I was just saying that it can be very typical to what you're used to when leasing in states. And if you're bringing the money to the transaction, you have a lot of leverage.
Yeah, the one thing I think that was different for me was paying 6 months up front or a year up front, because I'm so used to paying monthly, right? Paying a monthly lease in the States. So that was probably the biggest difference for me. Yeah, and the building that I live in now, they first said a year up front, which is kind of pricey, to be honest, right? If you're thinking about whatever you're spending monthly, just do the math. You guys have calculators, right? So even if your rent's under $1,000, if you look at it for a full year, it could be quite the expense.
Pretty penny.
And so yeah, I do think it's the 6 month payment I think is helpful. It at least cuts it down. But then of course, as you mentioned, there are some folks that are willing to negotiate. And that's definitely the case. You know, under my previous employment, I definitely had to do a lot of negotiating with how I paid my rent at this place that I'm staying at now, because it was difficult to kind of pay a whole year up front. That was not going to happen with my previous employment. All right, cool. So I did want to ask on the lease terms. I thought that was interesting. You know, people do ask a lot about how much money should they expect to pay for rent. And so I hear a lot of different things. So I'm just going to throw out a number and we go from there. So I said 2,000. I just threw out that number. I don't know where it came from, but $2,000 a month, because people talk about how expensive Ghana is. Maybe 2,000 is too much. Let's say 1,000. Let's say 1,000, because now that I think about it, 2,000 is a lot. So let's say $1,000 a month. Depending on the neighborhood, but what can somebody expect to get for $1,000 a month? Because I think that's a conversation and a question that people ask a lot. And so instead of saying how much is rent, I would say what can you expect to get for $1,000 a month?
You know, it depends on your budget, right? It really just depends on your budget and like what location do you need to be in. $1,000 a month in East Legon could be a 3-bedroom house by itself, you know, but on a Drigano or on a side that maybe is on a dirt road. $1,000 a month in Osu could be a furnished 1-bedroom, a furnished 2-bedroom. $1,000 a month in Cantonment Saboni probably doesn't exist. Probably doesn't really exist there, but it would be a small 1-bedroom or a studio. Or, you know, in Yaniba Estates, you can get an older home for about that much. Maybe Asylum Down. Definitely Oyarifa. You can find rentals out there. In Tema, that's a whole 4-bedroom house, maybe, you know. So it really just depends on your location and if you want it furnished or not, what you can get for that. I would say, like, when you're renting, if you're depending on where you're coming from and like kind of the lifestyle that you want to live, the things you want to look out for is like security. What's the level of security? If you're on the ground or first floor, are there burglar proofing windows? You know, who has access to the keys? Who has had access to your key? Is there a water reservoir? Is there a backup generator, separately metered ECG? You know, what's the water connection like? Is the supply from the city on a daily basis or 1 or 2 times a week? Is there a backup reservoir? Those kind of things are more important really than the level of furnishing in a place, but that also even falls under location. The location is very important because you can waste a lot of time in traffic in commuting if you don't take your location identification seriously. And also, if you're working from home and you need fiber broadband network, you have to be closer to town, closer to the center of town. So
Yes.
it really depends on what your lifestyle is, what you can get for $1,000 a month.
There you go. And so there's a couple comments here, a couple things that people had mentioned. One, so Anna had an interesting question. This is a good one too. Are agents in Ghana licensed?
So there is a new regulation entity called the Ghana Real Estate Professionals Association, and they are issuing licensing. It's not a law, like required by law as of this month, but it is, I believe, required as of 2023. You have to have a certification. There's the National Association of Realtors. There's an International Association of Realtors that you can also be licensed under, but you'll find most agents in Accra are not licensed. Neither do they come from a background in real estate. So again, you have to do your due diligence. Hope that answers the question.
Got it. Okay, cool. Yes, I think it absolutely does. So we are running up on time. We're going to be losing Maya here in a moment. So I'll save any of the comments that aren't specific to questions that you might have for Maya for after Maya jumps off, so we can continue to go. But a couple more questions for Maya on the Airbnb front, because I wanted to mention this because everybody who comes to town uses Airbnb, and many of us who are renting here or own here are going to be leasing or making our places available for Airbnb. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to talk, because we had this interesting conversation on Saturday. My days are blending together. Saturday. And you mentioned prices for Airbnbs and what to expect. So can we talk about that, like a 2-bedroom versus a 1-bedroom, depending on how you furnish it and all of that? But what are some of the prices that you can expect to see for an Airbnb 2-bedroom, 1-bedroom, that you and I had spoken about, right?
Again, it's varied. A 2-bedroom in Oyarifa versus a 2-bedroom in Cantonments, there's just a huge gap. So as far as location, amenities, construction, furnishing, it could be such a range. I am doing some data analysis for a client of mine, and I'm seeing that over the last 30 days here in Accra, the average Airbnb nightly rental rate is about $99 a night. So, you can get a very close to a hotel experience in these Airbnb. So you'll pay for that, plus the location, and then furnishing, what all is offered. It could be really nice. But then there's some Airbnbs is very laid back, very basic furniture, maybe locally manufactured furniture, very, basic needs. And then you'd be spending closer to like $40 a night. Again, it depends on your location, and it really depends on the standard that you have for your rental. Hope I answered that.
Okay, cool. So I know, yeah, I think it did. And I know you have to go in just a couple minutes. So a couple things before we go. One last question on the Airbnb front. Actually, on everything. Where is the best way to reach you? I know it's going to be in the description below, but I know people have some questions. They're going to have more questions for you. What's the best place to reach you, online or to find you online?
Yeah, so I'm running around all day long. So if you can just reach out to me on WhatsApp, I see the message a lot sooner, and it's easier for me to respond. If you have a detailed question or detailed communication, obviously it's better to email me. But WhatsApp and email are the two best ways to connect with me.
Got it. And then there was one thing that somebody had said. Well, first of all, thanks for doing this. I know it's late, almost 10 o'clock at night. So I appreciate you jumping on and doing this live with me.
For sure.
Yeah, and I think people are getting a lot of good insight into this. It's unfortunate that everybody's starting to join so late. That always happens here on the live. People get in around 10 o'clock our time. There's a lot of US people that join. But somebody mentioned that they're okay. Here, this is what Jerry said. I just wanted to give you this shout out really quickly. Jerry Campbell said, "More interested in Sierra Leone as far as relocation is concerned, but this lady could be any day. Cool energy." So, but yeah, I appreciate you doing this. Thank you so much, Maya.
Thank you. There's a lot of
so yeah, thank you once again. Maybe we'll do a part. Yes, it was, and maybe we'll do a part 2. I know I still have to interview you again. We have to do like an update to the last interview, and we'll be talking obviously this weekend because we got somewhere to look. We got something to look at this weekend. All right, cool. Well, thanks again, Maya. I know you have to go. I'll see you soon, and yeah, thank you. Thanks once again.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. If anybody needs me, if there's any way I can be of assistance to you, I'm sure Joe will leave my contact information. I'm super happy to help you in any way that I can.
All right. Thanks, Maya.
Bye.
Bye. All right, cool. So that was Maya King. She did have to go after 1 hour. Sorry, guys. I know I always go for like 2-3 hours, but not everybody who I interview is able to stay on so late. So I do appreciate her giving us an hour today. But there were a bunch of things that came up that I knew that weren't specific to her. So I wanted to hold those until a little bit later, and then go through some of my thoughts on Airbnb and a few other things before we bring this thing to a close. So there was a bunch of stuff that was said. I just want to kind of just pick up on some of the things that people had mentioned. So about the green spaces in houses. So there are, and I was mentioning this before. So Molly had said something about green space in houses. And so this is interesting because I didn't know about this, but a friend of mine has a bunch of property in Aburi, Aburi. And one thing I know to be true is that there are a lot of snakes and bugs there, and it is very, very flush with greenery. I mean, really tall grass, and it's just really, really nice there. It looks beautiful. But you do have to be careful at night and just ensure that the houses there are built like on like stilts, to ensure that like no snakes get inside. And so that probably answers the question as to why maybe a lot of people do make sure that they get rid of most of the shrubbery. But I have been to a couple places where it's fairly contained, like around walkways and stuff. So like in Cantonments, a friend of mine lives in an apartment building, and there are a ton of plants all around, the pool and in the walkways and all of that. And then there's a couple other places where I've seen it, but you're right. Whoever had mentioned it before, you don't see a ton of greenery in all the apartments, apartment buildings. But where I see it mostly is in estates, where people have an estate, and a lot of times they're doing the landscaping, and you just kind of pay a fee for that. So I have seen that though. Tim Black seems to think that that's a myth though, about the green spaces that attract lots of insects and snakes. I don't know what it's like in Accra, but I can definitely tell you in Aburi, that is one of the reasons why they have to build the houses on stilts. Tim Black was asking about leasehold. Are there many places that are not leasehold? I don't want a leasehold. I'm not sure that there are. I think Ghana as a country, as far as I understand, works in that way. But as Maya mentioned, you could probably buy from a chief. You could also potentially buy from a family. I don't know if in the case of a chief, if the chief has a lease on the land or leases it to you. I don't know how that works. But as far as I understood, any land that you acquire, no matter who you acquire it from, there is a lease on that land, because they don't have freehold here in Ghana. That's what I have been told. I am not an expert, but that's what I've been told. One thing that came up was Seth says, a lot of people don't know that houses in Kumasi are bigger and cheaper than houses in Accra. Yes, they are, of course. Anytime you're outside the capital city or anywhere that's not in a major heavily trafficked area, you are going to always have cheaper housing and bigger housing, right? African Millennial says real estate is so expensive in Ghana. That's what a lot of people are saying. Tim Black says, to rent, do you have to pay months in advance? And I've heard that a tenant have to pay all repairs. Is that true? So yes, you do have to pay months in advance. As we mentioned before, they can't make you pay more than 6 months in advance. It's by law, it's 6 months max. But some people will make that recommendation. And I've heard local people, a tenant or a landlord will force them to pay 2 years in advance, even though technically the law in the books is otherwise. And that's because not everybody can trust that you'll pay every month, right? The market conditions are such that especially for a lot of the locals, there could be some challenges with being able to come up with the rent monthly. So if you can find a way to get the money together and you can pay for a whole year up front, the owner can be ensured that they're paid for that amount of time. Do you have to pay for repairs? You don't necessarily have to, but you might want to if you wanted to get it done. And you know how if you want to get it done and want to get it done right, you might have to do it yourself. For instance, I wanted to include hot water in my apartment here that I'm living in. I had to pay for the majority of it. When I had my washing machine installed, obviously I had to pay for that, had to pay the tiler, had to pay the plumber, had to pay the electrician. And at first I paid some of that and then the other part of it. But what ended up happening was they have their own priorities and things they're planning on doing. Is that you'll meet the person who's doing the work and they'll want you to pay them directly. That was the lesson that I learned, was that I should have just hired a company and had them come do it, because the people that I had were individuals and they were not compensated the way they felt like they should have been. And they also didn't do the work the way I would wanted to have seen it being done. So I just will mention that. Patricia Matthews says, bless up everyone from Brooklyn, New York. Shout out to Patricia in Brooklyn. I was just there not too long ago. Patricia does say, try to invest in a home on the continent so you don't have to worry about being left out. Our people suffer enough. Yes, I definitely would recommend buying if you can, especially if you're spending an extended period of time. I'm also, I'm buying and building in Sierra Leone, and I'm planning the same here in Ghana eventually. Menelik says, peace, everyone. Sorry I'm late. No worries, no worries. Watch the playback if you have any questions about real estate. I know you were here, but if there are any questions. And then also Maya's information is in the description below if you got any specific questions for her. She did have to jump off within the first hour. Tim Black says, I understand y'all on the renting, but I was wondering freehold land. I don't want to. Oh, yeah, I already mentioned this one. Patricia says, I hope. What did she say? Patricia says, I hope all of you on the continent will be able to own a piece of Africa wherever you are. It's our home. Claim it. No lies told there. Okay. So Patricia Matthews said, land is important so you can build and own your place and no one can run you out. When you buy a home on someone else's land, it's not a guarantee that you own it. It's better you have your own space. Yeah, so you want to buy the land, of course. Yes. Okay. Patricia says, sorry I came late, but I always enjoy your live. Thank you. No worries, no worries. Okay, cool. Well, guys, I want to thank you all for joining. Let me know if you have any other questions. I have to run to the restroom. So if you guys are down to give me like 2 minutes to run to the restroom, I could come back to the live, but it is going to be kind of weird because you're just going to see the background here. So what I'll do is I will remove myself from the stream, but you guys can continue the discussion. If you want to keep the conversation going, feel free. I'm just going to run to the restroom really quickly. Give me 2 minutes. And I'll be right back. Jerry, I'm going to get back to your question. Just give me 1 second. Usually, if I had somebody else here, if Maya was still here, I would have let her answer some questions that I ran to the restroom. But I need to go. So I'll be right back, guys. Give me 1 second. Sorry about that, guys. I love that like many of you guys stayed on while I went to the restroom. Shout out to you all who stayed on while I went. All right, let's get back into some of the questions and comments. Kayron was fun to watch. Love her show too. Who's Kayron? You guys got to let me know. I don't know who that is. You guys got to keep me up to date on that. But a couple people seem to like her a lot. Brown Coat Blue is here. Shout out to Brown Coat Blue. What's up? What's up? Jerry Campbell said, "What's the price point for buying beach property in Sierra Leone? Is it freehold?" Okay, so it is freehold. Buying land in Sierra Leone, you don't lease the land, you buy it and own it. That is for sure the case in Sierra Leone. Now, beachfront property, depending on what beach, it can be up there though. You know, I don't know if you guys saw the live that I did on Saturday with Masa and Furia, but they mentioned that they purchased a piece of land. And as far as I understand, it could be a bit expensive. So I've talked to some other people who are looking at some land. Some of the land, it depends on the beach. Sometimes you can buy land for like $30,000 for 2 plots of land. Sometimes you can buy land for $50,000 or $80,000. Depends on what beach and depends on where. So it's hard to say in Sierra Leone. I would just say get to Sierra Leone, talk to some agents, go look at some property, and that'll give you a better vibe depending on where you want to go and where you want to live. It's really tough. It's really tough to say just because it's going to be dependent on where you want to stay. Patricia has mentioned that Kairan is located in Kenya, former expat. Okay. So I'll have to check her out. Yeah, so everybody's saying to check out her YouTube show. It's lovely. Okay, great. I will do. Any questions? Oh, so one other thing about Airbnb I want to mention to you guys while if you guys are coming here. I've done an Airbnb with 2 of my friends. We paid $30 each a night. It was a $90 Airbnb per day. It was a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom Airbnb. I also stayed at someone else's Airbnb for $30 a day. And I will tell you that Airbnb that I stayed in for $30 a night, I thought that was cheap but I started doing the math. I was like, man, this is really expensive. Ended up being like, that's like $900 a month if you really do the math. And so it was a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom apartment. I was sharing the bathroom with someone else, and I was sharing the whole house with other people. It was a total of 4 people at one point in time, sometimes 5 people in that house at the same time. And I was spending $30 a day. So I am so used to like New York Airbnb that's like $80 a day, $100 a day, even for a 1-bedroom, even for a studio. And so I was just really shocked. But like my place, a 2-bedroom or so, you can see depending on how you furnish it and how it looks, or how it's furnished and how it looks and what amenities are available. Yeah, you can spend about $70 a day, or to $90 a night, whatever, for like a 2-bedroom, right? So just be prepared. If you're coming to Accra, it's still much cheaper than a hotel. So if you're going to stay here for like, I don't know, a week or so, it's going to be cheaper than spending a week at a hotel. But if you're going to stay here for a month, then you should probably look for short-term leasing options as opposed to an Airbnb, because for a month, even if they try to give you a deal based on the daily rate, it still ends up being pretty expensive, even for a 1-bedroom. So I spent a lot of money on Airbnbs. I did a month at one place. It wasn't an Airbnb, but they do Airbnb it. It was $1,000. I spent a month somewhere else. That was like $900. I spent 3 weeks somewhere. That was about $600. And then I spent a couple weeks somewhere else that was like, I can't remember what it was, around $40 a day, which ended up costing me, I don't know, over 2 weeks, $40 a day. 40 times 10 is 400. So you add another 4 days, that's 80 plus 80, that's 160. So that's 560. Wow, I usually don't do math in public, and you guys might correct me. I might have gotten that off, but you get the idea. So it can get really expensive if you do it for a really long time. While A says, is it worth buying a suite studio for international Airbnb? Yeah, it could be, because as I just talked about, the prices can really it can really add up and get pretty expensive here. So if you have a place here and you can rent it out, then you can expect to make a pretty significant income on your place, as long as you do everything you need to do with it. And that's something that Maya and I are probably going to talk about that. I want to interview her specifically about what you need to do to your Airbnb to make it worth that price. But like, as someone who's going, if you're thinking about that, that maybe can be something that I do on like a Patreon or something eventually, where we just go into the details of Airbnb here, because there's a conversation that comes up a lot. And I've been a super host on Airbnb, so I can tell you what you need to do for that experience, for people to really feel like, yeah, I like this. And I've also been a consumer and a renter on an Airbnb, so I could definitely tell you from both perspectives what is a good experience that you can expect to pay for. Patricia says, whenever you all get the chance, close out all of your accounts in the West and invest now on the continent. Grow your money in either mining. Also invest in Tabsonite gems. Support Tanzania too. There you go. Apparently it's worth more than diamonds. Yeah, I mean, I would definitely say don't have all your eggs in one basket, right? So on the topic of investing, and I think obviously, look, I'm not a financial professional yet, and so I can't tell you where to put your money, but I would tell you that you definitely want to diversify your interest. I have money in Bitcoin, I have money in stocks. I am investing in businesses on the continent. I have my own businesses. These are all things that are meant to be income streams, and I would definitely recommend that you have income streams not specific to just one geographic location, because if you do that, you can end up in a place where if that place has a situation, you end up being in a position where you lose everything because you had all your eggs in that one basket. So I definitely recommend diversifying your interest and your investments for sure. So while A says agreed on the Tanzanite, it's rarer than diamonds and is predicted to run out in our generation. There's only one place in the world it's found, and that's at the foothills of Kilimanjaro. Interesting. I was not familiar with that, but there you go. Anybody who's into precious metals, sounds like here's one. Cool. So we're at an hour and 19 minutes, about 20 minutes beyond our conversation with Maya so far. Does anybody have any questions, comments, thoughts on anything we talked about today? More than happy to answer your questions if you would like. Yeah, I'll give a little bit more time if there's any more last minute questions. I'm just now getting used to being back on this time zone. Still been waking up at 9 a.m., which is pretty wild. I usually wake up at 6 a.m., but I've been going to sleep at 3, waking up at 9. So I'm still kind of getting readjusted to being back on the continent. Eating times, all of that. It's been interesting. I've only been back for a little over a week, so I'm still just like getting back in the rhythm. But it's been good to be back. It's good to be back home. And I don't know if you guys can see all the suitcases over there, but I basically brought a bunch of stuff back with me. So this is over a couple of trips. I shipped a couple suitcases to Sierra Leone, and so there was a couple trips to Sierra Leone. But you see those duffel bags with the orange handles, or the orange yellow handles? I brought those two. Brought that brown suitcase up there, and then carry on in another black suitcase. So it was really expensive. I will make sure that I'll let you guys know for sure. If you're traveling to Ghana, most airlines allow 2 free checked bags. If you're coming for an extended period of time, I recommend vacuum sealing your clothes. I saw a TikTok video on this, so I would definitely recommend it. Vacuum seal your clothes to be able to fit as much as you can in there. And I think it reduces the weight too. I'm not sure, but it at least reduces the amount of stuff that you bring, because any extra bags come with a minimum fee of at least $150, if I'm not mistaken, a minimum of $150. And then you also want to keep your bags under 23 kilos, because if it's more than 23 kilograms, you will be charged an additional fee for each individual kilogram, no matter the airline. Some have a standard fee of X, like $100. Some have other fees, but just keep that in mind, because I'm gonna tell you right now, I spent an extra $550 bringing an overweight suitcase and 2 additional bags with me. $550. So I want to tell that to you guys who are coming here and planning to spend some time. You might be better off just shipping a bunch of stuff, because that's going to cost you less in the long run. All right. Ms. P says, thanks, Joe. This was informative as usual. Thank you for joining, and I'm glad you found it useful. I'm always trying to make sure that I'm bringing value to you guys, to help you guys understand what the situation is like here on the ground, if you're planning to visit or planning to move, for sure. While A says, what are your thoughts on buying outside of Accra? My thoughts, it depends on what, you're buying for, right? So like every major metropolitan kind of grows, right? And so the value of the real estate outside of it always gets more and more expensive as time goes on. I haven't seen it go the other way yet. There's been market corrections and then it goes right back up. An example of this is like New York City, right? Jay-Z used to live in Marcy Projects. The Marcy, right across the street from Marcy Projects, is a condo building where you can buy a condo for $1 million, right? I lived in an area of Brooklyn that was considered like that the nicest of areas when I first moved in 2004. There's a building less than a block away from me. They put up some apartment buildings there. Some of the apartments in that building are $3,000 a month. We moved into an apartment at $1,400 a month, 1,100 square feet, 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom, balcony, corner apartment overlooking Prospect Park, $1,400 a month when we got in there in 2004. It's about $2,000 now. It's gone up about $600 over that time, almost 20 years. But there's an apartment 2 doors down that's like $3,500 a month. So, and we're rent stabilized in the apartment in Brooklyn that I'm at. That's why we've been able to keep the cost so low. So yeah, I mean, I use that example because I think the same thing is happening here in Accra, right? They call it the Greater Accra metropolitan area, right? And so that just means that like places that weren't considered Accra are now considered Accra, right? Like smaller towns. And so as you go outside and as time goes on, those properties will be worth more. But I don't know how long it'll take for them to be there. But it might be more affordable right now. And in your price range, it just might be tougher to get consistent tenants or tenants that are going to pay you a fee that'll be commensurate with how much you spent to buy the property. And so that's the kind of the give and take you have to take into consideration on that. In Sierra Leone, I have a property that's a little bit outside the capital city. I would say it's in the greater Freetown area. And, as of right now, the plots of land are going for pretty cheap. But I do know over time, just because of where it's located, eventually we can expect to see that those, the property values will go way up. And so, so that's my thoughts there. I mean, you're not going to get like an immediate flip or maybe even tenants that are willing to spend a ton. But I will say there are up and coming areas that kind of happen to fit into that range of, it's an up and coming area. So there's demand going there, but the prices are still a little bit lower. And that's East Legon Hills. But to me, it seems far, Masa and Kenya, or Masa and Fudia, they live in East Legon Hills. And so, they have mentioned on many occasions that, it's like the up and coming area. And when you talk to other people, that's what they'll say. Should I have said that? Or whatever. Yeah, so a lot of people are talking about East Legon Hills. That's the place where everybody's moving to. So I would definitely recommend, if you're thinking about buying, that'd be kind of the place to look at, because it's still considered, one of the neighborhoods in Accra is East Legon, and so this is East Legon Hills. So it's an underdeveloped area right now, and so it's growing in popularity for sure. And of course, there's a Sierra Leonean restaurant locally there to you, so you can try some Sierra Leone jollof. Patricia mentions native airlines on the continent, all over the continent. There are a few, right? Ethiopian Airlines, of course, is who I flew with. Air Peace. Yeah, that was a situation. Go back and watch those videos if you care to see what went down with that. But there are native airlines for sure. There needs to be more African cruises. I do agree with that. You got it all over the Caribbean and Latin America. You got cruises, and you got cruises even in the Nordics. And in Europe. So yeah, I definitely would love to see a cruise that goes around West Africa, right? Like one that would leave, I don't know, from, let's say, like Senegal and goes down to Sierra Leone, then maybe goes over to Togo or something, like, like, and goes back. I would love to see that. Or maybe it goes to 2 countries on the way and then 3 different countries on the way back, like you kind of do on the Caribbean cruises. That'd be great to see. I don't know what it would take, but I'm with you on that. More coach bus excursion are needed to create more jobs for locals too. Yeah, I mean, that's all the tourism board type stuff, where a local business would have to do that. I'm actually thinking about doing something similar to that in Sierra Leone. So yeah, more to come on that at some point in time in the future. Magnate says, what would you say a price of a 2-bedroom apartment in Ghana? That's tough to say. So this is a conversation that came up when Maya was on, right? And so a 2-bedroom is going to vary in cost. So like she mentioned in Cantonments, a 2-bedroom is going to cost you a pretty significant amount, probably upwards of 2,500, maybe 3,000, or at least 2,000, right? I've seen 2 bedrooms in Chado for $600, right? So, and then other areas in town too, you can find places that are going to be, less than 1,000 or over 1,000. So it really depends on where you are and how developed the area is. For sure, will dictate, how much it will cost you for a 2-bedroom. African Millennial says Ghanaian government should regulate the real estate market. Tell me more about that. I want to understand what you mean by that in particular. Patricia Matthew, I agree with native-born brothers and sisters. We need eco currency throughout the continent. We do. We definitely do. Lenora says they are moving to Ghana in 3 years. Nice. You want to live in Tema? Yeah. So Tema is an industrial area. So that's the one thing I think. Okay. So let me take a step back for that first question about where to buy. Tema's also another place that could be a good place to buy, because Tema's where the industrial area is. So when I was working at Jumia, we would go pitch clients in Tema all the time. So all the big multinational or even local brands, Wilmar, they have rices and their own like rices and spices, and other things. Many of the warehouses are all the way out in Tema. And so those folks don't want to go all the way back to Accra and back to Tema. So a lot of the people who work in Tema live in Tema. And so I definitely recommend looking into East Legon Hills and maybe Tema if you're thinking about buying something outside of Accra and you're wondering about a place that's going to be where people are going to be able to rent from you and it's an up-and-coming area. Definitely would recommend that. Patricia Matthews says we also need more trains excursions throughout the continent, but must not be owned by outside colonizers. I don't disagree with that. I'm with you on that. African Millennial says, I plan on doing that in 3 years as well. Oh, moving to Ghana. Nice. While A says we definitely need trains to reduce the reliance on travel by road. We do. When I was in Nigeria, I remember talking to someone about their railway line. They used to have a really functioning railway line, and it basically was run by the government. And then I guess they didn't put more investments into it, and it just kind of stopped. And so a lot of like even shipments and stuff end up going by road. And yeah, I definitely think we need to see more railways. When you think about it, right? I mean, that really was the way that people were able to go from city to city across the States and across Europe even, and at a faster pace. those things can go up to like 200 miles per hour. So if those things are at least 160, whatever, and when you don't have traffic and you're just going at 160 miles per hour, you can get to places much faster, right? So you can go miles and miles and miles in a much faster rate than you can by road, especially when the roads have, issues with them. The only thing I fear is that is the constant maintenance and upkeep for long distances to ensure that there's not something on the tracks or whatever that can derail a train, right? Because that could be a potential outcome, and that kind of makes me nervous, to be honest with you. Maintenance and upkeep is super important. Menelik says, my plan is to relocate to Ghana by or shortly after my 40th birthday, which is in 2027. Nice. Well, yeah, I'm here. Of course, I did that move. So I'd love to see more people making that move. And it's great to hear that you guys are planning it, which makes sense. I mean, that's why you guys are subscribed or at least watching these videos. And on that note, make sure you guys hit the like button. Make sure you hit the thumbs up on this video. Like this video. I want everybody to hit that thumbs up and like this video right now. And of course, when the replay goes live, would love for you to write your comments there too. And again, Maya's information is going to be in the description. Patricia Matthews said we should only do business with our brothers and sisters below the Sahara line. I hate the word sub-Saharan. We are not sub people. We're all in one continent. I like that. Below the Sahara line. I'm gonna screenshot that. Actually, that's a different. I like that terminology. There's a lot of people who really dislike the word sub-Saharan, and I get it, right? Because it does connotate in some cases less than, and in some cases when you meet people who are above the Sahara line, they even act as if sub-Saharans are less than. So I like that. Sub-Saharan. I like that. Saharan should now be below Saharan line and above Saharan line. Making a note. I'm definitely stealing that. Appreciate that. Patricia, that was a good one. I like it. African Millennial says French countries are stopping eco currency. Is that what it is? Oh, that was the conversation we were having before. Patricia Matthews says, otherwise, the northern part of the continent can stay with Europe since they're okay. Look, I will say, yeah, things are different above the Saharan line. They are Africans, and I do know some Africans from Algeria and from Morocco, and they're proud to be African, but it does have a different feel, just because of how much of it has been settled by colonizers throughout the years who continue to stay, right? So I could see why it doesn't feel a lot like Africa and Northern Africa. I've been to Egypt. That's the only place in North Africa I've been. And while I was in Egypt, I did feel like it didn't really feel like I was in Africa. It felt more like I was in the Middle East, which obviously makes sense too, because obviously Egypt does connect to Saudi Arabia, right? So I guess you can kind of imagine it is kind of the Middle East technically if you go far enough east. All right. Ghana might want to leave ECOWAS. Nigerian Ghana might want to leave ECO, like leave ECOWAS, or what do you mean by leave ECO? Menelik says, if you still need help running your YouTube or IG lives, let me know. You know what, Menelik? This is why I need someone. Yes. You know what? I will email you this week. I'm writing it. Here's my to-do list right here. I'm writing it on my to-do list right now. Follow up with. Okay. Yeah, I do need to follow up with you. So I will do that. Thank you for that. You keep reminding me and I keep forgetting. So, cool. All right. An African cruise in West Africa would be amazing. It would. It would. Voyages with Shaisha says that. Yes, I agree 100%. Patricia Matthews says, many of our brothers and sisters were killed recently by Morocco and Spain. Let them be left out. All right. Well, that is your opinion, and I'm not mad at it. All right, cool. We're now an hour and 36 minutes in. Wow. That went by fast, all the new comments that came in. As always, I do appreciate the engagement. You guys are always keeping these lives interesting and going. Gives me energy even after a long day. It's now 10:36 for me, and I got some email and some work to catch up on. I don't know if you saw this to-do list with 10 items, but there's still 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 items still left to catch up on. This wasn't 10 then. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Sorry, 12 items on my list. 7 still need to be done. So I'm going to be up late tonight finishing that. Cicely says, I'm living my best life in Africa, in Egypt. So Cicely is loving it in Egypt. Shout out to you. Patricia says, best up, love you all. Enjoy the rest of your night, everyone. Bye. Good night, Patricia. All right, guys. If there are no more questions, comments, thoughts, concerns, we are going to bring this call to this call. I always say that on my work calls. We're going to bring this live to a close. Almost every time I go to hit end broadcast, a comment pops up right at the end. So I want to give one more chance for everyone to say your final thoughts, any final questions you want me to address before we go. I will give it another 10 seconds for that. I will say, I interviewed Maya on her experience moving to Ghana. It was a while back. And so her and I hadn't gotten a chance to catch up in a while. So I'm going to be posting that likely this week. So you get a chance to hear her background. You know, she's lived in Miami, she's lived in New York, and now she's here in Accra, Ghana, and she's been coming to Accra for a while. Well, at least a couple years at least before the year of return. So you'll get a chance to hear her story and what she's doing here and why she's here and what brought her here and what her plans are. All of that will be on that interview. And then I'll do a follow-up now that she's been able to have some of that come to fruition, because I interviewed her less than a year in. And so now we're a year and a half in, and so there's a lot of updates. So we're going to do an updated version, but at least you get to hear her backstory and why she moved here in the first place. I think you guys will find that interesting. So I'm definitely going to be posting that this week, barring any challenges or issues with the editing process. Shout out to Sai, aka is it Sai, right? AKA Flower Child. Who is here in Accra, Ghana, as we speak, right? Yeah. So good night to you, and good night to all the other folks. YLA, thank you for joining. I appreciate it. All right, guys. Thanks for watching. It's always a pleasure. I look forward to seeing you all in the next video. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Make sure you guys subscribe. All right, that is all for now. Oh, Cicely would love to have a conversation with me about Egypt. We should definitely do that. Email me. So Cicely, email me, because I was in Egypt in November last year, and maybe we can interview you about your experience living in Egypt. I would love to do that. All right, good night, guys. Thanks for watching. As always, I will see you all on the next video.